Alright, so welcome back, guys. So today in this video, what we're going to be looking at is adding and subtracting rational expressions. So remember, rational expressions are just fractions, okay, that have polynomials on the top and the bottom. So just like with any fraction, when you add or subtract them, you must have the bottom denominator that is exactly the same. Okay, so what we have here are our steps on how we're going to add or subtract our rational expressions. Step one, if the denominators are the same, then we just have to add or subtract the numerators. Okay, so if our bottom numbers are the same, then we just add or subtract the top numbers together. Step two, if the denominators are different, we need to first find the LCD. Remember, that's our least common denominator, which we find it the same way we find our least common multiple. Once we find that, we want to write all the rational expressions with the LCD, and then we can add or subtract the numerators. Once we add or subtract that, we place our answer over whatever we found that common denominator to be. Once we do that, our last step is just to simplify if necessary. Okay, so if we can't simplify, we need to. All right, so this is what we're going to be looking at in this video. Okay, so let's get started. So here we want to add 4 over x squared plus 2x minus 8 plus x over x squared plus 2x minus 8. All right, well, the first thing we need to see is if we have common denominators. And in this case, we do. Both of our bottom numbers are exactly the same. So according to our steps, all we have to do is just add the top numbers. So 4 plus x, well, that's just 4 plus x. We can't combine those. And we write our answer over our common denominator. All right, but we're not finished yet. Now we need to see if we can factor in order to simplify. The top, we can't factor. It has to stay 4 plus x. But now the bottom, well, we can factor this into x plus 4 times x minus 2. All right, so x plus 4 times x minus 2. Well, now, x plus 4 and 4 plus x, they're the same thing, so they cancel each other out. And we're left with 1 over x minus 2. And now that's our final answer in simplified form. All right, very good. Let's look at one more fairly easy one with the same denominator to start with. Let's say we have 7 over 2r squared minus 11 over 2r squared. Well, again, the first thing we need to look for is whether we have that common denominator. And in this case, we do, 2r squared. So again, once you have that common denominator, that's going to be your denominator in your answer, 2r squared. So now all we have to do is just do the top. 7 minus 11 is negative 4. Well, we can reduce negative 4 over 2, and that reduces to negative 2 on the top over r squared on the bottom. There's nothing else that we can simplify there. That's in simplified form. All right, so we can see as long as our bottom denominators are the same, then the problem really is not that bad. It's pretty simple from there. The problem we run into is when we have different denominators. So you can see over here in our step, when that happens, the first thing we have to do is find the LCD. So before we really just look at problems, we're just going to practice on finding the LCDs. All right, so let's look for some LCDs. So we want to find the LCD of 5xy and 2x cubed y. So 5xy and 2x cubed y. So what we're looking for is the lowest common denominator. We're looking for the lowest possible number that both of these would divide into. Well, the lowest number that 5 and 2 divides into is 10. And now when it comes to the variables, we always just take whatever the highest variable is. Okay, so here I have x to the first power, here I have x cubed. The highest is x cubed. Here I have 1y, here I have 1y. So the highest is 1y. So my LCD is 10x cubed times y. All right, let's look at another one. looking to find the LCD between y squared minus 2y minus 8 and y squared plus 3y plus 2. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to factor both of these. So this factors into y minus 4, y plus 2. And this factors into y plus 1 and y plus 2. All right, so that's my two factors. So now how do we find the LCD from that? All right, well, it's very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to start with our first set of factors. We're going to write both of those down, y minus 4 and y plus 2. Now we look at our second set, and whatever factor we already don't have included here, we have to add it as well. So if I look first, I have a y plus 1. Well, we don't already have a y plus 1 down here, so we must add it as well. The next one is y plus 2, but if we look, we already have a y plus 2 down here, so we don't have to add another one. So our LCD is y minus 4 times y plus 2 times y plus 1. All right, very good. Now I want to give you one to try. So I want you to find the LCD. I'm going to add a third one up here. All right, so try pausing the video, taking you a few minutes to see if you can figure out the LCD between these three polynomials. All right, so now let's look at this to see if you were able to get the right answer. The first thing we need to do is factor each polynomial. Well, this first one factors into m plus 2 times m plus 3. The second one is m plus 2 times m plus 2. And this last one, okay, remember, it might be a little harder to factor with this 2 in front, but let's come over here and see. Remember, our first step of factoring is to always factor out the GCF. So we can take out a 2, and that's going to make it a little easier for us to factor. Well, now we know this is going to be 2, and then times, we just have to factor this. So we get m plus 3 times m minus 1. All right, so now we have each polynomial in factored form. Again, now we're ready to start. We write down our first set of factors. So that's x, well in this case m plus 2 times m plus 3. All right, so let's go here. Here I have 2m plus 2. Well, if I look, I only have 1 down here so far. We need 2, so I have to add another one. So I'm just going to make that m plus 2 squared. All right, now let's go to the last. I have a 2. Well, I don't have a 2 by itself here, so I'm going to add it. I'm going to put it in the front. M plus 3, I already have an m plus 3. M minus 1, I do not have that factor, so I must also include it. So our LCD for those three polynomials are 2 times m plus 2 squared times m plus 3 times m minus 1. And that's our LCD. All right, so hopefully now we're comfortable enough to find the LCD. We're going to start adding and subtracting these rational expressions with different denominators. All right, so 5 over 2p plus 3 over 8p. Well, if we look, our LCD, my LCD is just going to be 8p. So now we need 8p to be each one of our denominators. Okay, so that's what our step 2 told me. Once I find my LCD, write each rational expression with that as my denominator. So now I need this to be something over 8p plus, again, something over 8p. Well, this term is already over 8p, so we get to stay the same. But this one is not. So the only way we can go from 2p to 8p is if we multiply this by 4. Well, if I multiply that by 4, I also have to multiply my top number by 4. And 5 times 4 is 20. And now we have common denominators. We can add. So remember, once you have common denominator, that's your denominator in your answer. Now we just add the tops. 20 plus 3 is 23. So we get 23 over 8p. Pretty easy one to start off with. Let's try to get a little harder. So now we have 3 over x minus 2 plus 5 over x minus 6 over x squared minus 2x. All right, so now we're adding and subtracting 3 rational expressions. Again, our steps are the same. First, we need to make sure all the denominators are factored so that we can figure out our LCD. Well, this is factored, this is factored. Well, we can factor this more. This just becomes x times x minus 2. All right, so my LCD, I'll write down my first factor of x minus 2. Go to my second one. I don't have an x by itself, so I must include that. Go to my third one. I have an x times x minus 2. Well, that's what we already have there. Okay, so we don't have to include anything else for that. So my LCD is x times x minus 2. All right, so now we need to give each rational expression the common denominator. Well, if we look here, right now this is 3 over x minus 2. So the only part of it we're missing is this x. So I must multiply the bottom by the x. That means I also have to multiply the top by the x. And we get 3x. In the middle here, I already have the x, so I have to multiply it by x minus 2. So I have to multiply the top by x minus 2. And this last one, it already had the common denominator, so it gets to stay the same. So it's 6 over x times x minus 2. All right, now let's clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to have 3x over x times x minus 2 plus distribute our 5x minus 10 over x times x minus 2 minus 6 over x times x minus 2. All right, so now according to our steps, everything has a common denominator. So all we have to do is add or subtract our top numerators together. Our denominator will stay the same, x over x minus 2. We have 3x plus 5x, so that gives me 8x. Now I have negative 10 minus 6, and that gives me minus 16. And now we need to check to see if we can simplify this. Well, if we notice up top, it looks like they have an 8 in common. So let's pull out an 8. That's going to give me 8 times x minus 2 over x times x minus 2. We do have a common factor. X minus 2's cancel, and we're left with 8 over x as our final answer. So remember, you're not done until you simplify completely down to lowest terms. All right, good. That was a tough one, but we can do it. All right, let's look at some more. So again, what I want you to do, I want you to pause the video, attempt this one on your own, and then we'll look at it together. I will give you a hint. Remember, it's just like subtracting polynomials by themselves. When you're subtracting a polynomial, you have to distribute the subtraction all the way through. All right, so pause the video and give it a try. All right, so let's see how well you did. All right, so let's figure this one out and check your answer together. All right, so my first step is to factor my two denominators. So this factors into x minus 3, m minus 3, m plus 1. This one factors into m minus 2, m minus 3. All right, so my LCD, I'm going to start with these two factors, m minus 3 times m plus 1. And if I look over here, the only one I'm missing is the m minus 2. So I have to include it as well. All right, so now we need to write each fraction up with the common denominator. So right now this was m plus 4 over m minus 3, m plus 1. So my missing factor is m minus 2. So if I multiply it on the bottom, I also have to multiply it to the top. All right, so now that's minus. Right now we just have 2m minus 3 over m minus 2, m minus 3. My missing factor there is the m plus 1. So I multiply it on the bottom. I also have to multiply it on the top. Now let's simplify the tops. Let's fold them out. So this gives me m squared minus 2m plus 4m. So that's 2m. 4 times negative 2 is minus 8 over my common denominator. Minus, this is 2m squared. 2m times 1 is 2m. Negative 3m in the middle. So that gives me a minus m. And then last we get negative 3. All over my same denominator. That common denominator we found. All right, now we're almost ready. But before we just combine these, remember, because it's a subtraction, we have to distribute this all the way through. So now I'm going to write it up as 1. So it's m squared plus 2m minus 8 plus, I'm going to change this to addition and just change all my signs. So that's plus negative 2m squared plus m plus 3. My common denominator stays the same. All right, now let's add up what we have. Here I have m squared plus negative 2m squared. So that leaves me with negative m squared. 2m plus m leaves me with 3m. Negative 8 plus 3 leaves me with negative 5. Remember, write your answer over your common denominator. M minus 3 times m plus 1 times m minus 2. And there we go. We're finished. You can try to factor that, but that will not factor. So that's the simplified form for our answer. So make sure you're getting plenty of practice with this, and if you have to, go back to factoring and catch up and brush up on your factoring skills. All right, I hope this video helps, and enjoy the rest of your day.